Puis, tu peux prendre une grande inspiration, partir quand tu veux.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sue SPROULE. I'm here at Lux Media to give you an update again on the story of GLORIANE Blais, an ex-Quebec lawyer that got disbarred for standing up against our public health policies imposed on us during the COVID in Quebec from 2020 to now. I'm just an ordinary citizen that started following GLORIANE Blais because my cousin Manon was following her on the internet for a couple of years. I only bumped into her story this past year. And on the 5th of February, we went to the court where she was trying to appeal at the Quebec Appeals Court, her case to be heard because she got a ticket for not wearing a mask during a peaceful protest in Montreal on the 20th of December, 2020. So that's where her troubles kind of start, but I want to go a little bit further back where Madame Blais was also involved defending a very rich Quebec businessman against the government. Investissement Québec, it's an institution that is in the financing that her client had dealings with. And she brought up his court case to the Supreme Court of Canada. And when she brought up her appeal to the Supreme Court, instead of that judge at the Supreme Court willing to look into all she had presented to the lower court of Quebec, he made upon himself to call the Quebec Bar Association and to demand that she go through disciplinary decisions. All that because she's a dissident. She decided to stand up for what she thought was not right. And I can relate to that. Myself, I've been in legal process with my union Unifor and my employer that recognized that I had an impeccable employment career of more than 30 years, and that is Air Canada. Everything the Bar Association tried to do to Madame Blais, that was the first disciplinary action they took upon her, is for her to be ordered to receive medical evaluation. The medical evaluation, that was the term they used, was really a psychiatric evaluation. They assigned a psychiatric doctor of the Collège des Médecins in Quebec. That is also an organization that is under the influence and ruled by the mafia, that is our Quebec government. So, instead of her complying with that ordinance, that she was never even received an audience to even plead to why she was going through this disciplinary action for defending her customer. So that is just the part I wanted to explain, and that case is now currently pending at the Human Rights Tribunal. But the real case, that is Madame Blais, ex-lawyer of Quebec, that started her career in 1999, that opened her own office in 2004 so that she can pick her own cases and decide who she would represent, just happened to be at a protest during the COVID while we were under the government Quebec decree by our Prime Minister, Monsieur François Legault, that decided to impose certain restrictions upon our citizens. The province is the only place in the world that we had a curfew. Nobody else had a curfew. Nobody else had restrictions like they were imposed on the citizens of Quebec during the COVID pandemic of the World Health Organization. And now with everything currently coming out in the news, bits by bits and drops by drops, everything that's been done by Madame Blais during those ridiculous sanctions and impositions are making a lot more sense to the ordinary citizens such as myself that is talking to you here from Lux Media. By the way, the only independent Quebec media that receives zero funding from the government. It's all based on donations from us, the public, like you and me. I was asked to come and talk about it and to attend because I'm outraged what happened to this lady, because everything they've put her through, I had to comply with during my own ordeal with my union, Unifor, that I worked for over 22 years as a health and safety representative that used to be CAW, and also by my employer. When I went to the Human Rights Department of my company, Air Canada, in 2011 and 2012 to denounce bad practice and bad behavior of 3 clowns from my call center, that's where I became the enemy of my bosses, my company, and even my union, because I did not go through the proper channels, and I went straight to HR to denounce sexual harassment and psychological harassment happening in the Montreal call center. The first things the company imposed on me was psychiatric evaluations. By the way, I went through 10 of them. And then the first thing I was prescribed was antipsychotic medication, antidepressant medication, and I was on 5 different meds, including something to help me sleep and everything. So I became a walking zombie, completely destroyed and not understanding what happened to me. It took me almost over 10 years now to understand what was done to me. And now I see why Madame Blais refused to comply to such unlawful, inhumane, unreasonable imposition of just because she questioned what our government was putting in place. Because of the law, we have our public health law in Quebec that was created and submitted and put it into law in 2001 that has ramifications now in 2020, 2021, and up to today, now that we're into a World Health Organization mandate under pandemic, moratories, and all kinds of things like that. I don't really understand everything going on in the court system, but I can tell you just by attending Mrs. Blais' hearings fighting for us, it was an eye-opener. The 5th of February, she tried to appeal so she could get her case reopened, and she wanted to make sure that she had on public hearings that they didn't even read her documents. And this past week, this Monday, Tuesday, yesterday, the Tuesday, the 20th of February, was now at the regular justice court, but that was to be in front of her order, if you want, the Bar Association order, because they disbarred her. And what happened there? The day started funny because there was some cafouillage about where it was supposed to be held, and then they had to change and fix up to open up a room for us to be able to attend that hearing, because these are all public hearings. Even though they make it difficult for us, the public, to know what's going on in our justice system, it's up to us to find out and to follow the right people to find out about these cases. And Madame GLORIANE Blais' case is so important to us as a regular citizens. Not only that is she's contesting her ticket she got 2020 for that protest for not wearing a mask. She could have just paid it. She could have also used the arrêt Jordan. That would have gotten her off the hook. Instead, she took the hard way. She decided to remain solid, courageous, integrity, and to go ahead because she couldn't live with herself, nor for the future of her children and all of us, basically, to just let it go. She had it in her. It was stronger than her. And I understand her feelings, because when I decided to stand up in my call center, it wasn't about me. It was what was being done and destroying my colleagues. They were going on sick leaves. Some of them quit. There's been suicides. There's been people ending up losing everything, their livelihood, their job, and ending up in psychiatric wards because they can't face what had happened to them. And all that, just by following Madame GLORIANE Blais, put a different perspective in my mind. I understand now. It's not what I did. It's because I stood up and questioned the authority in place. I'm a dissident. That's basically what Madame Blais is as well, in a completely different level, because she's an ex-lawyer. I'm just an employee, a unionized employee of a very big corporation in Canada, but still, I understand what you went through. And what I really, really understand on Tuesday is the farce of our system, of our court justices. I have a feeling we're watching a theatrical play in front of us. She was speaking clearly. She was speaking with diligence, with competence, knowledge of her case, knowledge of her law. Don't forget, Madame GLORIANE Blais' specialty is policies, procedures of medical law. In English, it's medical malpractice, but it englobes a big, more than just medical malpractice, is to understand ramifications of laws and impositions. So she's basically an expert in her field. So while the pandemic rulings and impositions and, I would say, non-logic things they imposed on the ordinary citizens, such as me and you, I get it now. This is just abuse of power. Anybody who stands up and decides to question authority, question a law that makes absolutely no sense, such as what is permitted currently in the public health law of Quebec, is outrageous. We have criminals in power. I'm sorry to say this, but this is the only logical explanation for the way we are going after any person. Either you're part of any professional order, either you're part of the Collège des Médecins, either you're part of the Bar Association, either you're part of an engineering association. They all want you to follow the government guidelines. The government is not God. The government is actually currently even unlawful, if you ask me, because they're not following our charters of liberties that we have in Quebec. They're not following the Charter of Human Rights we have in Canada, and they're certainly not following the Charter of Human Rights under the United Nations. This should be a case for Nuremberg, but no. Nobody's standing up. Everybody in the shadows supported me. I have still up to today received thank yous from colleagues who are telling me, thank you for your courage, for sending up and putting in those complaints to help other employees. And I'm just talking about Air Canada. How many other companies, how many other orders have been silenced? And the biggest example I'll give you right now is our journalists in Canada. Do you know that Unifor, the union, is the union that is under the controlling the entire Canadian Press Association? They are the union representing every single mainstream media, except Lux Media here. There's no union, there's no professional order. These are all citizens and people who have concerns that have a little bit of expertise, or like me, that is fluent in English and in French, to just come and chip in and give a hand. And by the way, on that note, if you want to help Lux Media, there's going to be links that you can provide donations to help support us to continue informing the public. And there's also funds going that we want you to, if you can, obviously, please support ex-lawyer GLORIANE Blais, that is fighting for the unconstitutionality of our public health laws in Quebec, and that will have ramifications in Canada and around the world if she can breach this spirit that is the justice system currently in Quebec and Canada. Because technically, the third branch of government is the justice system, and they're supposed to have impartiality, they're supposed to have integrity, and they're supposed to be competent. But you can be competent and lack integrity and lack honesty. And unfortunately, our judges are appointed by the government. So the impartiality is really non-existent currently, very much to the detriment of what's happening to all of us citizens of Quebec and Canada. I would like to let you know that Mrs. Gloriane Blais is going to have a very, very important court appearance on the 11th of March that is coming about, and that's going to be held in Quebec City. So if you can, please be present. The more people, ordinary citizens like you and I, that are present to support in her case, the stronger the messages to our government and to the people that are holding the power to make a difference and to maybe change and respect the citizens of this province and this country, as per our Charter of Rights gives us the right to freedom and liberty. But freedom and liberty comes at great expense of responsibility. And there's some people that have the power to make a difference. And there's some people that have the power to destroy you. Currently, the Quebec Bar Association, and although it's not a good thing to always name names, but in this case, I will. Maître Daniel Gagnon, he's part of the Administrative Council of the Quebec Bar. And this person is the one who instigated the ordonnance. That means the order for Madame Gloriane Blais to be evaluated medically, is what it says. But in reality, they assigned a psychiatric doctor. So it was a psychiatric evaluation. They've destroyed the reputation of this lawyer so much that she had to get a non-divulgation order on the memoir that the Administrative Council of the Bar Association of Quebec had put through, because as far as Madame Blais is concerned, it's all lies. And I believe her. You know why? Because I went through those 10 psychiatric evaluations. You should have seen the lies that were sold about me, that my mother was bipolar, when in actually she was dying of cancer, that my family and myself, we had previous family history of mental illness. That is completely false. So not only did you destroy my reputation, you've now destroyed my family's reputation. So, and I'm a nobody. I'm just somebody that decided to stand up for my colleagues and my unionized world of work. That was the airline industry. As Madame Blais, on the contrary, not only is she standing up for her right to be able to practice her law degree and to represent customers, but they are trying to destroy also her reputation. So I completely understand why she refused to comply to that order. And by doing so, she got her first radiation. It's not the proper term, but she lost her right to practice law in Quebec. So now she's considered a regular citizen in the eyes of the justice system. And why I'm saying this is, I'll take you back to yesterday morning when we were at the courts. There was 3 judges there. There was Judge Nadeau, there was the judge-in-chief of that hearing, that is Madame la Juge Veilleux, and there was another Judge Nadon. It was mostly Judge Veilleux that was talking and trying to interrupt Madame Blais in her expose about what she had presented as proof, as documented expert, she had put through for the courts and everything, for them to be informed to the reasons why she was appealing those decisions. So Madame Veilleux, the Judge Veilleux, said, yes, we already took, we already know your case, we already know your documents and everything, but Madame Blais, she got Madame Veilleux to admit that she had only summarily went through it, and that she didn't really know all the details of the case, but they were ready to rule. So Madame Blais said, no, that's not how it's proceed. I'm no longer a lawyer. First of all, stop talking me Maître Blais. I'm just an ordinary citizen, so I'm Madame Blais in front of you today. And because I'm only Madame Blais in front of you today in front of the courts, you have an obligation towards me, the citizen, Madame Blais, to protect my rights. And some of those rights are like just natural principles of justice, like being allowed to present your case, your proof, your experts, your witnesses, all things that have been denied to her. I know, I went through the same thing. They didn't even want me to have people attending my arbitration, my mediation, or even my meetings with the union and the company. I actually recorded them, and I told the union I recorded them. And that was also another problem I entered in with them. But all that was just to protect me, not to make any trouble with them. But her, she's going ahead with it. She's standing up. She's strong. But do you know how much it took a toll on her family, and especially on her financial security? When she was a lawyer, she had no financial problems. She had cases. She was working. She was taking care of her family. And now, since they've disbarred her, now she's working for nothing because she decided to stand up no matter what. And if there's anybody that you should be standing by as an ordinary citizen in Quebec and Canada, please look up on Facebook and on Twitter, Madame GLORIANE BLAIS. She's less comfortable in English, but she's still able to write to you and to give you explanations without any problems. I've learned more just following her videos and her explanations. And actually, there's a French interview that was done yesterday afternoon here in the studios with André Pitre and Caroline Mayou of Lux Media. That was 2.5 hours almost, very long, but so informative. Even Ken Pereira was there, and him too, whistleblower from the Commission Charbonneau. He's been through the same thing. All his colleagues of the union and the professional engineer orders and everything, all in hiding and in silence, came to say, thank you, Ken, for standing up. We need somebody like you. But they do it in private. They don't have the courage to stand up, because if they do so, they're putting at risk their ability to practice their job. They're losing the ability to even keep their job, their financial security. They lose everything. I know that's what happened to me. I'm without salary since September 2015 because the CNSST in Quebec takes away your right to sue your employer, and you get judgments from the tribunal, the Tribunal Administratif du Québec. You get judgments that are non-binding. They're all in the spirit of the law. They want you to do something like that, but the employer or the defendant, whatever you want to call it, has no obligation to follow anything that's in there. So why are we going through years of procedures and legal system attendance if in the end there is no change? But Madame Blais is standing up regardless of all that. And yesterday, she actually sent them a very strong message, letting them know that we, the people, the citizens, are watching. There is no peace without justice in a society. And if we continue to accept the abuse and basically the corruption of our governments, what they are doing to us, what does that mean the next time they decide we're in a pandemic? What means the next time they decide there's a health emergency happening in our province or our country? Are we going to follow blindly things that make absolutely no sense and no logic? And more, all the things that have happened during COVID, everything is coming out now. The mask mandates were not only useless, but they are actually causing damage, psychological damage to children and bacterial damage to everybody that were imposed to wear them on long hours of work. So that's just an example. But Madame Blais yesterday told them, because it really looked like a clown show, I'm sorry to say, and I apologize to the people that are still dignified in our justice system, your silence is not dignified. By not talking and not standing up and not trying to make the changes that some few courageous people like Madame GLORIANE BLAIS is doing, you are sending the message that follow the rules and obey, and everything will be okay. But that's not a reality we're living in. We're in an abusive situation where our government is using every powers given to them to do unlawful decisions. And like in GLORIANE Blais' example, the Conseil d'administration of the Quebec Bar not only didn't even have her attend a meeting. They had 3 meetings under huis clos. I'm sorry, I don't want to mistranslate this one. That just means it's like a private audience. It's nobody's allowed to attend. And actually, Madame Blais wasn't even attend the first one in her case. She was only advised after she was receiving a court order to receive a medical evaluation. That was really a psychiatric evaluation. So I'm in awe of this woman that she said no to it. And she decided, I am here debating a problem of procedures, integrity, honesty, and the problems of our justice system. I am not here to protect my job, even though I lost the ability to practice my job. And by the way the judges at that hearing yesterday were trying to interrupt her all the time, call her maître when she's an ordinary citizen, those are all intimidation tactics. These are all things to make you feel little, insignificant, not important. She kept her calm. She kept her dignity. She stood up and she continued her pleading in front of the courts, even telling them that she was going to put some really complaints against the Bar Association for how they've been treating her. Because how can you be sitting on a bench to rule about a person that lost her right to practice and you didn't even read the documents she submitted to the court? How is that even justice? How can you call that a justice system? How much money are we, the citizens, paying for this clown show? We need to support Madame Blais. Everybody in Canada should be looking and following this court proceedings. There's no mainstream media talking about it, not even in Quebec, even though this has incidence on our future and maybe even in the coming up months with the treaty the World Health Organization is working on to impose on us. And that's for everybody. That also is not being talked about. You as a citizen have to make a choice. It's either you stand up, get informed, send some money to support the ones who are standing up and taking the sacrifice of losing everything they've worked for in their life, or at least attend. When there's protests, when we're asking people to attend a court hearing to show the justice system and the government that we are serious, we're telling them we stand behind Madame Gloriane Blais because what she's trying to bring forward is the unconstitutionality of our public health law. I'm sorry, I have a hard time with that word. But basically, we're dealing with a political mafia. You will see under the link here at Lux Media, if Gloriane Blais' social media accounts and also links if you want to make a donation. But please, please, please mark to your agendas. Quebec City, come by plane, come by car. There's Facebook groups. There's people getting together. They're driving in from everywhere to go attend. It's on the 11th of March, 2024 in Quebec City. We do not have the court details yet, but is the Court of Appeals because she's trying to appeal again to be able to get a new trial because she was denied her right to natural justice and a fair trial where she could present her case to why she was contesting the ticket she received in 2020. Thank you very much for supporting independent medias. We need more people standing up and talking about. And if you want to help or do anything, there's always people here at our group of Lux Media that will be happy to answer you. And if you have something to offer, they're here to help also the ordinary citizens. That's how I came to be here, because they gave me a voice in my journey to fairness and respect. And thank God now I have a representative, a legal representative, that's trying to get what was rightfully mine restored to me. But I'm just a drop in the ocean. The real big case in here that has ramification on all citizens is what Madame Blais is doing currently. Thank you, Madame Gloriane Blais, the only, or I should say there are others, it's just that she's the only one who publicly stood up in Quebec, for all citizens of Quebec, when we have 28,000 lawyers. I'm not saying that all those lawyers don't have a heart and a conscience and a soul. I'm just saying they're lacking courage, just like our judges, our justice system, and the politicians that have the power in their hands to make things right. Don't forget, without justice, there's no peace. And at some point, it will affect all of us, and we have to stand up for all of us. Stand up for yourself, stand up for your kids, stand up for our future. All this has really have to be dealt with, and the sooner the better, because it's not looking good for us in the future if we just sit down and continue just watching TV and believing everything they're feeding us. Thank you for watching this podcast. Thank you for supporting Lux Media. Thank you for supporting Madame GLORIANE Blais. Thank you for supporting every person like Ken Pereira and even myself, the small drop in the ocean that are trying to make a difference in our everyday life and for our colleagues and co-citoyens of our country and our province. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.